In this video, we're going to continue looking at pioneering Protestants in Thailand in the 19th century. We're going to take a look at some of the approaches and methods that they used, as well as some of the responses from Thai authorities. They were doing lots of things. They were very active. They're trying to share the gospel. They're bringing modernization to the country. But what were the Thai thinking about these things? In the 19th century and the 20th century, the continued presence of missionaries and foreigners in general in Thailand depended large part on the goodwill of the king. It wasn't until 1932 that Thailand transitioned from an absolute monarchy to a constitutional monarchy. Before that time, what the king said was the law of the land. 1851, King Mongkut, or King Rama IV, ascended to the throne. In comparison to previous monarchs, he was liberal, tolerant, enlightened, educated. He was very friendly to missionaries. A missionary, Jesse Caswell, had been his personal English tutor. Mongkut was interested in Western science, Western education, learning. He wanted to acquire the tools, the knowledge that would help develop his country and put it on par with the Western powers. Thailand wanted to be respected on the world stage, and modernization was a way to get there. However, the relationship between the king and the missionaries ran both ways. The king was very happy to have the missionaries in the country. The missionaries were very happy to contribute education and medicine and Western knowledge, language education to the king and to others in the Thai government and the Thai nation. But for the missionaries to continue to be in the country, the king required them to respect him and to continually invest positively in the country. They could preach their religion, but they had to be respectful and submissive to the appropriate authorities. With this in mind, in 1854, an incident happened that almost caused the ejection of all the missionaries from Thailand. An article appeared in a Singapore newspaper called the Straits Times. On September 12th, 1854, there was a short article named Siam. In this article, there was some severe criticism of King Mongkut. He didn't know who wrote it, but he was sure that it must have been one of the foreigners in the country who had written it or had given the information to whoever wrote it. The king was angry. He felt disrespected. He summoned all the foreigners in Bangkok to the palace. He demanded to know who wrote it. He wanted a confession. He wanted an apology. But nobody knew who wrote it. Nobody confessed. The servants and the helpers of the missionaries either fled or were arrested. Mongkut was getting ready to kick them all out of the country. It was only through the intervention of Sir John Bowring, the English ambassador, that helped diffuse the situation. And so in the end, Mongkut and the ambassador and the foreigners were able to discuss together, and Mongkut decided that it wasn't best to eject them all from the country. To this day, we're not sure who wrote that article, although there's a distinct possibility it might have been a young Mormon missionary who had stayed for a short time in Bangkok, was upset about something, and then he gave information to the Singapore newspaper, which resulted in the critical article. Nevertheless, this incident was able to be worked through, and King Mongkut eventually made a treaty with England in 1855, and then a treaty with the United States in 1856. 1855, American Presbyterian missionary Stephen Mattoon was appointed as a U.S. consul in Bangkok as well. In this time period, there was an overlap between diplomatic service and missionary service because the number of foreigners in the country was extremely small. So sometimes missionaries were called upon for diplomatic duties as well. Thailand as a nation was never colonized, which is a fact that many Thai are very proud of. Often, King Mongkut Rama V and his son, King Chulalongkorn Rama V, are credited with wisely and cleverly keeping the colonial powers at bay. However, I think we also need to factor in the goodwill created by the early missionaries in bringing modernization, in bringing education, bringing medicine, in creating good relationships between these foreign powers and the Thai authorities. In 1871, George Seward, who is the U.S. consul in Shanghai, had a conversation with Luang Nai Sit, who was the former regent of Siam. Luang Nai Sit, the former regent, said this to Seward. He said, Siam has not been disciplined by English and French guns as China has, but the country has been opened by missionaries. Siam has not been disciplined by English and French guns as China has, but the country has been opened by missionaries. What did he mean by that? In other words, it was a view of the former regent of Siam that foreign missionaries had created goodwill and they brought Western development to Thailand. They created this goodwill between foreign powers and Thai authorities such that England, China, other countries did not need to bring in the big gun. They didn't need to force Thailand to open as they forced China to open. Because there was a good relationship between the missionaries and the monarch, treaties were able to be signed. The Western powers got what they wanted in terms of trading privileges, protection of foreigners who were living in Thailand. So the colonial powers did not need to colonize in order to get the benefits that they wanted. Thailand was able to maintain her freedom, maintain her independence. There was some pressure on the border regions, which we'll talk about later. But on the whole, Thailand was able to preserve its independence to avoid colonization, in part because of the wise rule of the kings, and also in part because of the goodwill created by the missionaries. These missionaries may not have always been thinking about paving the way for international treaties, but that was the result. The missionaries were there to share the gospel, but they also brought Western learning and Western civilization as well. But in bringing in both religion and Western civilization and science and the English language and other findings of and knowledge from the West, the Siamese were very clear in what they wanted and what they didn't want. Um, the Thai are open to all sorts of things from other countries, but they will pick and choose what they want and what they don't want. And the missionaries, um, their preaching was tolerated because of the other benefits that they brought. This was very clear in something that Mongvu once said to one of the missionaries. He said, "The sciences I receive, astronomy, geology, chemistry, these I receive. The Christian religion I do not receive." I'm not sure how it could be much clearer than this as to what the king of Thailand wanted and what he didn't want. He tolerated the missionaries. He talked with the missionaries about religion. He exchanged thoughts and opinions with them. Den Beach Bradley and King Mongut fellowshipped over the printing press, which was a mutual interest of theirs. But the monarchs did not want Christianity, but Christianity was tolerated because there was other benefits that the missionaries brought in. I want to take a moment now and talk about some of the early missionary methods. What were the missionaries actually doing? One of the primary things that a number of them did was medicine. Dr. House of the American Presbyterian Mission in 1849, he was able to treat people who were suffering from cholera. There was an epidemic that killed 30,000 people in Bangkok. There were bodies floating in the Chao Phraya River. House managed to vaccinate and save 1,000 people due to his efforts. But there was also a lot of indifference to modern medicine. There was a suspicion of this foreigner's medicine. It took a long time for local Thai to buy in to the foreign medicine. Actually, into the 20th century, there's still quite a bit of resistance. And using medicine in order to create goodwill and in order to love people, Jesus healed the soul and he also healed the body. And the missionaries, they wanted to do the same. They didn't have miracle working power, but they did have modern medicine, and they did what they could with what they had. Another method of evangelism ministry was schools. Previously in Thailand, the only schools were temple schools, and the curriculum was only for boys, and it was only reading and writing and Buddhism. The missionaries introduced education for boys and for girls. It was difficult to get them to school initially, and sometimes they had to pay the parents in order to get the kids to attend schools. And the Thai did not trust women teachers. But the missionaries were not dissuaded. They spearheaded women's education in Thailand. They spearheaded what would eventually become public education at the primary level for all the people of Thailand. This is something that the Thai government eventually became convinced they wanted and they needed, but it was the missionaries who started a lot of initial schools. But the schools actually took a lot of time. In 1878, Samuel McFarland, who was in Petbury, province west of Bangkok, and he quit his work there and he came in to Bangkok in order to run a school for the government. Why did missionaries, why did Protestant missionaries put such an emphasis on schools? Protestants emphasize the Bible. People need to be able to read and understand the Bible. Well, in order to read the Bible, they need to be able to read. And there was a lot of illiteracy at that time. To this day, Thai people don't really like to read all that much. They can read, but it's not very popular. But there is universal education in Thailand teaching reading. And some of the early pioneers of general education were the missionaries. They wanted people to be able to read the Bible, but there was also a philosophy of civilize to evangelize. They wanted to spread Christianity, but they also wanted to spread Western civilization. Western civilization culture was far second to the gospel, but both were there in the missionaries' minds of some importance. The gospel being primary. Another method of evangelism they used was printing. They thought that the press was the assistant of evangelism. They translated the New Testament. They published and distributed tracts, books like Pilgrim's Progress. In 1852, missionary Stephen Mattoon said that the presentation of the truth with books is powerful, but not just books. Throughout history, there's been stories of someone who randomly receives a gospel tract or Bible and they read it and they're converted, but that's the minority of people who become Christians that way. Much more often, uh, people become Christians with the aid of books, but not solely by books. You need someone actually sharing the gospel, sharing your life, building relationship. But books can be powerful, and they have been used greatly in Thai history to bring people to faith, and also in many places in the world today. From research done about 2008, 2009, 60% of Thai Christians today say that some sort of tract or Bible or Christian literature had a part in them coming to faith. It wasn't the whole picture, but it was something that was important. Besides medicine, schools, printing, the missionaries also did quite a bit of itinerant evangelism. In terms of residence, they were restricted to Bangkok, but they could go out on itinerating tours for days, even weeks at a time. They traveled by boat, they traveled by elephant, they traveled on foot, mostly during cold season between November and January. During hot season, it was too hot. During rainy season, everything was flooded. They would spend overnights with the people in the villages, taking lots of time together, sitting around the fire, talking, sharing their lives, sharing meals with them. These were some of the methods that the early missionaries used. As has already been mentioned, sometimes they taught English. Jessie Caswell was a tutor to the king. Some missionary ladies, Mrs. Bradley, Mrs. Mattoon, and Mrs. Jones, they had an interesting opportunity to go into the temple, not to teach the king or any of the men, but they could teach the palace ladies and the children as well. So for a period of 3 years, Mrs. Bradley, Mrs. Mattoon, and Mrs. Jones visited the palace, teaching English to the palace ladies and to their children. However, even though their teaching started off as English, which is what they agreed to teach, eventually religion, Christianity, became more and more the content of what they taught. One of their annual reports said they actually didn't do a whole lot of English teaching anymore, but they just basically talked about religion and religious subjects. This all came to an end in 1854 when the king got upset about the critical article in the Straits Times. One day, these three missionary ladies, they went to the door of the palace and they were not let in. A few years later, after the incident with the newspaper article had been worked out, that they were permitted to go back in and resume their teaching like normal. But then a short time after, they were blocked and they were never allowed back in the palace again. No explanation, no reason why. They were just cut off from that teaching opportunity. Was it right for them to neglect English teaching for the sake of evangelism? What should missionaries do today when they have the opportunity to teach English? We don't know the reason why they were denied the opportunity to continue teaching to the palace ladies, but but an event that happened a few years afterwards gives a little bit of insight into the mindset of King Mongu in this regards. In 1862, the king hired a woman named Anna Leonowens to teach English and teach other subjects to the children of the palace. We need to keep in mind Mongut's previous experience with English teaching. Jesse Caswell tutored him in English, and then Caswell asked permission, specific permission, to teach religion, and the king gave permission for that to be done outside of English teaching hours in a separate part of the temple. In 1862, Mongut advertised for an English teacher in a Singapore newspaper. An Englishwoman, Annalene Owens, responded. Um, she wasn't a missionary, but she would become well known because she wrote a journal, which was very later turned into a 20th century novel written by American Presbyterian missionary Margaret Landon. The novel was turned into a Broadway play and a movie, The King and I. And more recently, about 20 years ago, there was a movie version called Anna and the King. All of which, except Anna Leonon's original journal, are banned in Thailand because the Thai judged it to be an unfavorable depiction of King Mongol. The entire story of Anna is not relevant for our purposes here, but I want to share with you the offer of employment letter that King Mongol sent to Anna. Mongol was perhaps the first Thai person to speak English fluently, not perfectly, but fluently. So the words I'm about to share here, this is his letter, his actual words, not a translation from Thai. So it's a very short letter, so I'll read it in its entirety, but I want to highlight a bit in the middle. This is the 26th of February, 1862. To Mrs. A. H. Leon Owens. Madam, we are in good pleasure and satisfaction in heart that you are in willingness to undertake the education of our beloved royal children. And we hope that in doing your education on us and our children, whom English call inhabitants of benighted land, you will do your best endeavor for knowledge of English language, science, and literature, and not for conversion to Christianity, as the followers of Buddha are mostly aware of the powerfulness of truth and virtue, as well as the followers of Christ, and are desirous to have facility of English language and literature more than new religions. We beg to invite you to our royal palace to do your endeavorment upon us and our children. We shall expect to see you here on return of the Siamese steamer Jalpraya. We have written to Mr. William Anderson and to our consul of Singapore to authorize you to do your best arrangement to you and yourself, for you and ourselves. Believe me, yours faithfully, Maha Mongut. Mongut was very clear in what he wanted, and it wasn't Christianity. He was happy to allow missionaries to come in Thailand and work in Thailand in virtue of the other nation building and modernizing benefits that they brought. But his tolerance had limits. In our next video, we'll move out of Bangkok and head north as we look at the pioneering ministry of Daniel McGilvray in northern Thailand.